Late on the evening of August 1st, 2018, as night had fallen over Chixi City in Zhejiang Province, China, the new metropolis shopping district remained bustling with crowds of people shopping and enjoying their evening. Amid this scene, the owner of an arcade inside the shopping center was startled by blood-curdling screams coming from the corner where the claw machines were located. The cries for help pierced through the noisy atmosphere, filled with sheer terror, prompting the man to rush toward the source without a second thought. When the shop owner arrived, he was utterly horrified by the scene unfolding before his eyes. A man with a vicious demeanor had one hand clamped around a young woman's throat, while his other hand wielded a gleaming knife, attacking the victim in a frenzied and brutal assault. The helpless young woman struggled weakly in desperation, her slender frame no match for the strength of her attacker in his murderous rage. Without hesitation, the shop owner shouted at the top of his lungs, calling for attention from those nearby in hopes of stopping this savage act. His cries quickly drew the attention of curious onlookers, causing many nearby shoppers to rush over to see what was happening. When the attacker realized he had been discovered and was surrounded by the terrified gazes of the crowd, he immediately released his grip, threw the barely breathing young woman to the ground, and fled the scene. Local police received the emergency report within minutes of the tragedy and immediately dispatched officers to the location. When the first investigators arrived at the claw machine area in the new Metropolis shopping center, they found a young woman lying motionless on the cold floor, surrounded by a pool of blood that was slowly spreading, soaking the ground near the colorful claw machine. Medical personnel rushed to perform emergency procedures with all the urgency and professionalism they could muster. However, despite their intensive efforts to revive the victim, it was all in vain. The wounds were too severe, and the young woman had taken her last breath on the way to the hospital. The crime scene was engulfed in chaos and grief. Police sirens wailed continuously as patrol cars and ambulances lined up one after another. The anguished cries of witnesses echoed throughout the once lively shopping district. Many witnesses still couldn't recover from shock after witnessing such a brazen and brutal attack in a public place. According to one witness present at the scene, the streets were still crowded with people at the time. The victim had been casually playing the claw machine. Then suddenly, a man appeared, and in an instant, with just one swift strike of the knife, the young woman collapsed to the shock of everyone around her. The witness added that they had tried their best to chase after the attacker immediately after witnessing the incident, but the killer was too quick, disappearing into the panicked crowd before they could catch up. The crime scene was immediately cordoned off by police that night, separating the curious crowd still gathered outside with their expressions of fear and curiosity. Under the bright lights of the shopping center, experienced investigators began their meticulous work. The preliminary examination of the victim's body revealed multiple deep wounds on her neck and abdomen, with blood soaking both her clothing and the floor beneath. Even with the naked eye, forensic experts could immediately determine these were fatal stab wounds, delivered with great force and frightening precision, targeting the most vulnerable parts of the body. The method of killing demonstrated an unusual level of brutality, far exceeding typical homicide cases. The murder weapon was not found at the scene. The killer had likely taken it with him when he fled, an action showing he remained calm and clear-headed enough to eliminate evidence even in such a critical situation when discovered. Fortunately, the forensic team collected several useful pieces of physical evidence that could prove crucial in tracking down the perpetrator. First were small droplets of blood scattered in a faint trail leading toward the shopping center's exit, likely bloody footprints the killer inadvertently left while hastily fleeing the scene. Additionally, a white medical mask covered in blood was found on the floor not far from the victim's body, likely an item the killer accidentally dropped during the struggle with the victim or while panicking and running away. With this important evidence, especially if DNA analysis from the blood samples on the mask yielded positive results, police were hopeful they would soon have significant leads to identify and apprehend the perpetrator. While the crime scene investigation was being conducted meticulously, another group of investigators quickly coordinated with the shopping center's management to extract all data from the security camera system installed in the area. This was considered one of the most important sources of evidence that could help reconstruct the entire sequence of events and identify the killer. Through careful analysis of the footage, which was rather dark and blurry due to unfavorable lighting conditions in the late evening, investigators initially identified the silhouette of a man wearing a black shirt, his face concealed by a medical mask. He appeared stealthily, gradually approaching the victim from behind the claw machine. The timestamp on the camera matched perfectly with the estimated time of the crime, precisely 8:58 p.m., just seconds before the crowd began to stir and rush over following the victim's screams. Further analysis of the killer's behavior from the footage revealed that he acted with extreme speed, decisiveness, and determination, without any hesitation or wavering. Notably, he had chosen to strike at a secluded corner of the shopping center where no security guards were stationed nearby, and which was also a blind spot for many surveillance cameras. This detail proved the killer was not acting impulsively in a moment of anger. Rather, he was quite calm, calculating, and had prepared thoroughly in advance, even though the entire attack took only seconds. The fact that someone dared to brazenly attack a young woman in the middle of a crowded public place, despite the risk of being discovered and caught on the spot, indicated the killer was either completely reckless with no fear of consequences, or a cold-blooded individual who had lost all humanity, or perhaps driven by an extremely powerful personal motive that overwhelmed both reason and self-preservation instinct. Investigators hypothesized that a complicated romantic relationship gone wrong, or some deep-seated grudge, likely existed between the killer and the victim, something significant enough to make him disregard everything to commit murder. Another important detail that reinforced this assessment was the complete absence of any signs of robbery or property theft at the scene. The victim's purse, phone, and personal belongings remained intact, untouched, and nothing of value taken. This led to the conclusion that the attacker's sole objective appeared to be taking the victim's life, a clearly premeditated murder. The detailed report from the forensic department after completing the autopsy provided additional information. According to the experts, the victim had suffered dozens of consecutive stab wounds, all concentrated in the two most vulnerable areas of the body, the neck and abdomen. Particularly notable was that the killer not only stabbed, but also twisted the blade after each thrust, creating wounds with openings as wide as 1.5 inches, causing maximum damage to the victim. This was a characteristic sign of a frenzied killing, demonstrating extreme hatred and a desire to completely destroy the target rather than merely cause injury. Based on the initial clues gathered at the scene, combined with behavioral analysis and forensic conclusions, Cixi City Police determined this was very likely a homicide stemming from romantic or personal revenge motives. The killer and victim most probably knew each other beforehand, and some serious conflict had driven the perpetrator to this extreme action. So who was this unfortunate young woman? What kind of life did she lead, and what could have caused someone in the prime of her life to meet such a tragic and brutal end? To answer these questions, local police decided to focus all resources on verifying the victim's identity and clarifying her social circle. However, in the first hours, this work encountered considerable difficulties and seemed to reach a dead end. The young woman had not been carrying any identification documents such as an ID card, driver's license, or student card when she was attacked. The only item on her was a mobile phone, but the screen had been shattered during the struggle with the attacker amid the chaos, making it more difficult to access the information inside. Nevertheless, investigators decided to collect the damaged phone, hoping to extract valuable information from within. After considerable technical effort, when they finally managed to unlock the device and access its data, they discovered numerous missed calls and countless urgent messages sent in the short period before and after the incident. All came from phone numbers saved with familiar names like Mom and Brother, messages filled with worry, anxiety, and panic over being unable to reach her. Along with police investigative efforts, information about this horrific case also spread at lightning speed across local social media platforms. Within just a few hours after the incident, China's two most popular social media platforms, Weibo and WeChat, were flooded with posts, discussions, and countless speculations about the true identity of the unfortunate victim. Many social media users shared short video clips hastily recorded on mobile phones at the scene, showing the victim lying motionless in a pool of blood next to the claw machine. These heartbreaking images circulated accompanied by countless sympathetic comments mourning the tragic fate of a young woman in the prime of her life. The online community buzzed with discussion, everyone wondering who the victim was and why she had met such a terrible end. Among the thousands following and commenting on the incident, some sharp-eyed netizens noticed that the young woman in the scene footage looked very similar to a fairly popular hot girl on the short video platform Douyin, a beautiful young woman with hundreds of thousands of fans who regularly posted modern dance videos. Her name was Chen Xiaofeng, 22 years old, currently working as a children's dance instructor, while also being a rising internet sensation on Douyin with over 400,000 followers. Information about the suspected identity of the victim from the online community was immediately forwarded to police for verification. Without wasting a moment, investigators decided to directly contact the phone number saved as Mom in the victim's phone contacts. When the call connected, a middle-aged woman's voice came through, clearly in a state of panic and extreme worry. She said she had been frantically searching everywhere for her daughter after the girl had mysteriously lost contact. Phone calls went unanswered, text messages received no reply, leaving her deeply worried. When investigators asked about specific identifying features of her daughter, the poor mother burst into sobs over the phone, her voice choking and breaking as she tried to describe every detail about her child. She said her daughter was about 5 feet 5 inches tall, had long flowing hair, and notably had a tattoo on her back of a cat and a dog, along with 2 special names with personal meaning. Upon hearing the tattoo detail, investigators immediately recognized the complete match with what the forensic team had discovered and documented on the victim's back during the autopsy. From this point, the identity of the unfortunate young woman was finally confirmed with certainty. Through the detailed verification process with family members, police determined the victim was indeed a young woman named Chen Xiaofeng, born in 1996, just 22 years old, born and raised in a well-off family in Cixi City, Zhejiang Province. In her family, Xiaofeng was the pampered youngest child, with an older brother. Her parents were successful entrepreneurs who owned a sizable, stable manufacturing facility that provided substantial income, allowing the whole family to live comfortably and materially well off. From childhood, Xiaofeng had been loved and spoiled by her parents and brother like a little princess. She grew up sheltered and carefully cared for, never having to worry about anything, her life always filled with love and abundance in every way. However, what was admirable was that despite being born into a wealthy family and thoroughly pampered, Xiaofeng never displayed arrogance. On the contrary, according to those who knew her, she was a young woman with a very gentle, mild, obedient, and polite character toward everyone around her. Academically, Xiaofeng was not an outstanding or exceptional student in traditional subjects. However, from an early age, she had shown a passionate love and natural talent for the art of dance. She devoted most of her free time to dance classes, practicing diligently with a burning dream of one day becoming a professional dance instructor. In 2015, after completing her studies and graduating from a teacher's college with a major in dance, Xiaofeng decided to return to her hometown of Cixi to begin her career in early childhood education. With her professional diploma and burning passion for the arts, she was quickly hired at a public kindergarten in the city. Concerned about their daughter having to wake up early and travel long distances every day to work, Xiaofeng's parents decided to gift her a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment conveniently located near the kindergarten where she worked, making her daily commute much easier. Thanks to this generous support from her family, Xiaofeng had her own home at just 19 years old. With a stable job providing regular income, plus solid financial support from her family, the young woman's life flowed smoothly and comfortably in every way. However, deep in the young woman's heart, the flame of passion for dance continued to burn and constantly urged her to seek new opportunities. The kindergarten job, while stable, couldn't fully satisfy her desire to dance, to perform on stage, and to teach the art of dance to others. Therefore, outside her regular weekday hours at the kindergarten, Xiaofeng took advantage of her free time on weekends to teach part-time dance classes at a children's arts center in the city. There, she had the opportunity to do work she truly loved. Over time devoted to both jobs, Xiaofeng gradually realized an undeniable truth. Her greatest passion in life was still the art of dance. Dancing was not just a career or a simple hobby, it had become an inseparable part of her soul and life. In 2017, after many sleepless nights of contemplation, Xiaofeng decided to resign from the public kindergarten to become a full-time dance instructor at a private dance academy. This was a rather bold and risky decision for a young woman. Income could fluctuate, there wouldn't be full social insurance benefits, and the career future was harder to predict. Due to these concerns, Xiaofeng's parents initially disagreed and opposed their daughter's decision. However, faced with their daughter's determination and burning passion, they eventually softened and agreed to respect Xiaofeng's choice. Fortunately, the income from full-time dance instruction turned out to be much better than she had expected, giving Xiaofeng growing confidence in the path she had chosen. With her improved salary, the 21-year-old treated herself to some comforts. Her parents also helped buy her a Mercedes-Benz for convenient transportation. In her early 20s, Xiaofeng had a pretty, refined appearance and a youthful style. Friends described her as friendly, easy to get along with, carefree in life, but very serious about romantic relationships. Because of her kind, innocent nature and somewhat naive approach to love, Xiaofeng easily attracted the attention of untrustworthy men, something her parents always worried about. They often reminded their daughter to be careful in love, not to easily bring boyfriends home or trust someone too quickly. Outside of work, Xiaofeng had an active personal life. She regularly posted videos of dance routines she choreographed or fun everyday moments. Her youthful, adorable style quickly attracted a large online audience. Before the day of the murder, Xiaofeng's Douyin account had 59 videos with about 400,000 fans and over 2.9 million likes. Her clips were full of positive energy, showing a girl who loved life, enjoyed dancing, gaming, collecting stuffed animals, and especially loved playing claw machines at shopping centers. At 22, Xiaofeng was living the most beautiful days of her life. No one could have imagined that tragedy would strike this dream girl. Immediately after identifying the victim as Xiaofeng, the young dance instructor with a gentle personality and somewhat naive, inexperienced nature in romantic matters, the investigation team quickly focused resources on exploring the hypothesis that this was a homicide stemming from conflicts in the victim's romantic relationships. Both family and close friends consistently reported that Xiaofeng had just ended a relationship with her ex-boyfriend not long before the incident. More notably, this ex-boyfriend had previously shown alarming violent behavior and had continuously harassed and obsessively pursued her even after they had broken up. His name was Wu Yidong, born in 1991, 5 years older than Xiaofeng, from a poor family in a remote rural area of northern China, where his family made a living beekeeping in the distant Inner Mongolia region. Through the process of verification and expanded investigation into the suspect's background, police gathered detailed information about Yidong's troubled childhood and turbulent upbringing. As a child, because his parents frequently had to leave home to work in distant areas, Yidong was sent to live with his elderly grandmother. The grandmother, frail with age, couldn't properly discipline or educate her grandson, leading Yidong to grow up in an environment extremely lax in discipline and severely lacking in family affection. These difficult circumstances contributed to shaping his warped personality from a very young age. Yidong became a stubborn, uncontrollable child who was used to getting whatever he wanted and wouldn't listen to anyone. Regarding his education, Yidong was negligent and unserious, frequently skipping school to hang out with bad influences, engaging in delinquent behavior and bad habits. Nevertheless, with some natural intelligence, he managed to complete college. However, throughout his years in school, Yidong was notorious as one of the most difficult problem students, causing teachers endless headaches and frustration whenever they had to deal with him. In terms of appearance, according to those who had interacted with him, Yidong had a tall build, a fairly attractive and pleasant face, the type who easily made a good first impression. He also had a way with words, knowing how to use language to charm and persuade others. These outward attractions helped Yidong easily make good first impressions on new acquaintances. However, hidden behind that polished exterior and sweet words, according to those who knew and understood his true nature, was a dark heart with a terrifying evil character. Yidong was extremely selfish, thinking only of himself, enjoying a comfortable life but extremely lazy when it came to work. He had no stable career whatsoever. After graduating, he only worked a few odd jobs briefly before quitting, eventually falling into chronic unemployment. Without legitimate income, Yidong mainly lived off the meager money his elderly parents in the countryside still regularly sent him, despite their own financial struggles. His life in Cixi City was makeshift, aimless, and directionless, drifting meaninglessly from day to day until he met Xiaofeng. The two first became acquainted around 2017 by chance at the college where both had studied. At that time, Xiaofeng was a senior student, while Yidong was already an upperclassman who, despite poor academic performance, was still hanging around the school. From their very first meeting, the young man with his delinquent, pleasure-seeking nature was powerfully attracted by the gentle, kind, and pure beauty radiating from the dance major. Xiaofeng was like a pristine flower in a garden, standing out with her rare purity and innocence, completely different from the women Yidong had encountered in his party circles. With the instincts of a seasoned player accustomed to pursuing women, Yidong immediately set his sights on winning this gentle flower's heart at any cost. Every day, regardless of sun or rain or harsh weather, Yidong would patiently wait at the foot of Xiaofeng's dormitory building early in the morning to walk her to class, then appear right on time in the afternoon to accompany her back. He frequently bought her favorite snacks, volunteered to carry heavy bags whenever she needed to move things, and willingly served as an unpaid backstage assistant whenever Xiaofeng had a performance. Yidong's attentive, thoughtful, and relentless care, combined with his attractive appearance, charming humor, and smooth talking, gradually touched Xiaofeng's innocent heart. For a young woman who had grown up sheltered and protected by her family, never having experienced many setbacks or struggles like Xiaofeng, the bold, passionate, and excitingly unpredictable kind of love that Yidong offered was an entirely new and thrilling experience. She felt loved and cared for in a way she had never experienced before, and this novelty obscured her ability to recognize the true nature of this man. After more than a year of persistent pursuit, Yidong finally achieved his goal. Xiaofeng had fallen for the enthusiasm and determination of this upperclassman, officially agreeing to become his girlfriend. But the sweet happiness of this first love didn't last long. Like an elaborately staged play that must eventually end, once Yidong had secured the naive girl's complete affection and trust, his true nature began to gradually emerge. The man who had once been sweet, caring, and attentive to her every need during the pursuit phase became arrogant and often boasted to friends about his romantic conquest, having won a girlfriend who was both a beautiful internet celebrity and from a wealthy family. Yidong was immensely proud and smug about dating a rich girl, repeatedly and shamelessly showing off Xiaofeng's affluent family circumstances to his party friends. At times, he would even brazenly mock and tease her in front of others, calling her a princess who had it easy from birth. What made Xiaofeng feel most outraged and insulted was Yidong's brazen, presumptuous decision to move himself into her private apartment without asking permission or giving notice to her parents, the actual owners of the home. With honeyed words and promises of caring for and loving her, he had cleverly persuaded Xiaofeng to let him move in under the pretext of wanting to be close to better take care of and protect her. However, behind these flowery words, Yidong's real purpose was simply to take advantage of free housing without paying rent or any expenses, while also being close enough to easily control and monitor his girlfriend's every move. And from when the two began living under one roof, numerous serious problems began arising and worsening. Yidong quickly revealed his true colors as a freeloader. He absolutely refused to look for work or try to earn money, sleeping until noon every day, then upon waking would just play video games and browse social media. All household expenses were borne entirely by Xiaofeng. Not only did Yidong not contribute a single penny to their shared expenses, but he would constantly beg for money. Every time he ran out, he would hold out his hand asking his girlfriend for more to continue his lifestyle. If Xiaofeng for any reason didn't give him money or refused his unreasonable demands, Yidong would immediately turn violent without any hesitation or mercy. Throughout those supposedly sweet days of romance, Qiao Feng repeatedly endured brutal abuse at the hands of her own boyfriend, beaten until her face was black and blue and her body covered in bruises. Despite her suffering, both physical and emotional, she endured it and didn't dare tell her parents or brother about the dire state of this relationship. If her family found out the truth, they would certainly force her to end things with Yidong immediately. In reality, Qiao Feng's parents had early on sensed something was wrong with their daughter's relationship. In late 2017, noticing their daughter behaving differently than usual, they decided to secretly visit the apartment unannounced. When they opened the bedroom window, her parents were stunned to see a strange man emerging from inside. It was Yidong. He casually said hello and then went back in and closed the door to continue sleeping. Qiao Feng's parents were both shocked and furious at this situation and immediately vehemently opposed their daughter's relationship. However, Qiao Feng at that time still stubbornly defended her boyfriend, even declaring outright that if she couldn't marry him, she wouldn't marry anyone else. Faced with their daughter's stubborn and resolute attitude, her parents had to temporarily yield, still hoping that time would help her come to her senses and reconsider. But contrary to the family's expectations, Yidong showed no positive change whatsoever. On the contrary, he became increasingly violent and controlling of every aspect of his girlfriend's life. Whenever Qiao Feng gently suggested he should find a job to have stable income, Yidong would immediately fly into a rage, claiming his girlfriend was looking down on and insulting him. Arguments between them began erupting with increasing frequency, turning their shared life into a series of tense, suffocating days. Qiao Feng found herself in an extremely difficult situation, having to rush around teaching extra classes to earn money to cover living expenses for both of them, while also coming home to endure her boyfriend's unpredictable mood swings and volatile temper. The final straw came in the early morning of June 20th, 2018. That night, Yidong and Qiao Feng had another major argument about money. After Qiao Feng had fallen asleep from exhaustion, Yidong sneakily took her phone, opened the Alipay payment app, and transferred 10,000 yuan, approximately $1,400, from his girlfriend's account to his own. Around 4 a.m., Qiao Feng suddenly woke up and discovered the money in her digital wallet had mysteriously vanished. Without needing to think much, she immediately knew who was responsible. Qiao Feng was furious and immediately demanded Yidong leave her apartment at once. However, he refused to comply and resisted violently. The two struggled, pushing each other until the bedroom door was kicked in. Terrified and distressed beyond the situation's control, Qiao Feng hurriedly called her brother for help. The commotion was so loud that neighbors had to call the police, and eventually local officers came to document the incident and mediate between the two parties. After this serious incident, Qiao Feng began to gradually wake up and reassess her relationship. She decided to end this toxic relationship and officially broke up with Yidong in mid-July 2018. However, he refused to accept it and continuously tried to win her back. At this time, Qiao Feng was also beginning to gain some fame on Douyin thanks to a spontaneous dance clip that had attracted over 1.8 million likes from the online community. Ironically, this very fame caused the relationship to fracture further. Instead of reflecting on himself to change, Yidong believed his girlfriend had now become famous and was looking down on him. Previously, he had seen Qiao Feng's internet fame as a golden opportunity to make money, continuously pressuring her to film clothing advertisement videos to earn commission from brands. But Qiao Feng didn't want to turn her passion into a money-making tool. The two argued even more over this, until she decided to declare the relationship completely over. Yidong's reaction to being dumped was extremely extreme and frightening. The man who was used to controlling and dominating others couldn't accept being abandoned. He began implementing a plan to win her back through both violence and psychological threats. Sometimes he would send Qiao Feng videos of himself kneeling and crying pitifully, begging her to come back. Other times he would send clips of himself abusing the pet dog they had raised together to intimidate and pressure her psychologically. Not stopping there, Yidong also found where her car was parked and vandalized Qiao Feng's Mercedes to terrorize her. Despite facing such deranged behavior, Qiao Feng remained resolute in not going back to him. She tried to avoid Yidong, blocked all methods of communication, and informed her family that she had broken up with him so they could assist if needed. Her parents and brother repeatedly warned her about Yidong's danger and advised her to report to the police. However, Qiaofeng was still complacent, thinking that after a period of no contact, Yidong would eventually calm down and give up. The information gathered from the victim's family and friends quickly made Yidong the prime suspect in the investigators' sights. Immediately, multiple search teams were simultaneously deployed to locate and apprehend the suspect as quickly as possible. One task force was sent to Yidong's home address to check, but he wasn't there, and no one knew where he was. Meanwhile, another team focused on extracting and analyzing data from traffic cameras along roads near the crime scene. The results completely matched police's initial hypothesis. The cameras clearly recorded that at exactly the time Qiaofeng left her workplace in a colleague friend's car, Yidong was driving his own car, following closely behind. The extracted images showed a license plate that perfectly matched the vehicle registered under Yidong's name. This evidence further reinforced the conclusion that he had stalked and tailed the victim throughout her journey from work, patiently waiting for the most opportune moment to strike. While police were urgently casting a wide net to search everywhere, an unexpected development occurred. On the morning of August 2nd, 2018, suspect Yidong voluntarily appeared and turned himself in at the Cixi City police station. The young man walked in with a haggard face and an inscrutable demeanor. Without much interrogation needed, he voluntarily confessed to all his criminal acts before the investigators. News of the killer's surrender spread quickly, shocking not only the public but even experienced investigators. The case that had seemed complex and prolonged was closed with unexpected swiftness, less than a day after the tragedy occurred. With the successful capture of the suspect, investigators needed additional evidence to clarify every detail, ensuring no important facts were missed for subsequent legal proceedings. During an urgent search of Yidong's residence, police recovered a sharp, wooden-handled knife about 8 inches long that he had used in the crime. The knife still had dried blood matching the victim's blood type. Additionally, Yidong's confiscated phone showed that on the day of the incident, he had called and texted Qiaofeng multiple times without receiving any response. Most notably, investigators found an unsent message still in the phone with threatening content. "If you don't come back, we'll die together." This was like a death sentence for the victim. This evidence clearly showed the motive for the crime had been brewing beforehand. Police also collected testimony from an important witness, the colleague friend who had given Qiaofeng a ride on the evening of the murder. This person recounted that Qiaofeng had worked late that day, so she asked for a ride home. When they neared the new Metropolis shopping center, Qiaofeng spotted the claw machines and asked to be dropped off to play for a bit. Her friend parked some distance away to wait, so she didn't see the attack. Only when she heard the screaming did she run over, but it was already too late. This detail matched the killer's confession. He admitted to having staked out near Qiaofeng's workplace, adding that if her mother had come to pick her up that day, she would still be alive, because he only dared to act when he was certain the victim was alone. Indeed, during the period before, Qiaofeng's mother had usually picked her daughter up from work. But on August 1st, she happened to be busy, so Qiaofeng asked her friend for a ride instead. This cruel coincidence created the opportunity for the murderer to act. From the evidence collected and Yidong's testimony, the full picture of the case gradually became clear. Police concluded this was a homicide due to personal romantic conflict. Suspect Yidong, out of hatred after being rejected by his ex-girlfriend, had savagely taken her life. The preparation process was quite evident. He brought a knife, wore a mask, and followed the victim from her workplace until the moment of the attack, clearly demonstrating premeditated intent. Yidong had even prepared a surrender plan after the crime. He stated he knew he couldn't escape because there were too many witnesses and cameras, so he chose to turn himself in, hoping to receive consideration for voluntary surrender as a mitigating factor. The investigation concluded within just 2 weeks with complete evidence for prosecution. On January 28, 2019, the Ningbo Municipal People's Procuratorate officially indicted Yidong for intentional homicide and intentional destruction of property. The case file was transferred to the Ningbo Intermediate People's Court for open trial. The case was quickly brought to open trial due to its serious nature and public attention. The first instance trial was held on May 30th, 2019 at the Ningbo Intermediate People's Court, with hundreds of people attending to hear the verdict for the killer. Defendant Yidong was charged with homicide with aggravating circumstances including killing an ex-girlfriend due to romantic conflict, acts of a brutal nature, and causing public alarm. At the trial, Yidong sat with his head bowed, both hands clutching his head, his demeanor clearly tense. When it was his turn to defend himself, Yidong didn't deny his guilt, but mainly pleaded with the court for a reduced sentence because he had surrendered and confessed honestly. His lawyer also cited this factor, arguing it was a circumstance that shouldn't warrant the maximum sentence. However, the prosecution rebutted that the defendant's actions were particularly cruel, premeditated, and demonstrated determination to complete the crime, causing irreparable consequences. Therefore, the harshest punishment was needed as a deterrent. After deliberation, the Ningbo Intermediate Court announced the first instance verdict. Defendant Yidong was found guilty of homicide, sentenced to death, and permanently stripped of political rights. Yidong subsequently appealed to the Zhejiang Provincial Higher People's Court, hoping to escape the death penalty. He hoped his surrender and show of remorse would result in a reduced sentence to life imprisonment. However, in December 2019, the Zhejiang Higher Court rejected the appeal and upheld the death sentence for Yidong. The case of Qiaofeng finally concluded with the harshest sentence for the killer, with Yidong paying for his crime with his own life. However, the aftermath of this tragedy continued to shock Chinese society for a long time afterward. The death of the beautiful young dance instructor with a bright future ahead became a wake-up call about the problem of violence in romantic relationships and the incalculable danger from those who love obsessively and with blind jealousy. Her tragic story will forever be remembered as a stern warning about the consequences of being trapped in toxic relationships, about the danger of loving blindly without recognizing early warning signs. At the same time, this serves as a reminder to everyone, especially young people, about the importance of protecting one's own safety and love. No love is worth trading for your own safety and life, and that is today's case. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.